Hello, and thank you for joining us for the first installment of our Alumni Speaker Series for spring of 2021. We had some great alums participate in this speaker series in the fall, and if you've missed any of those recordings, you can go back and watch them on either the Concord University YouTube page or on the alumni page of the website. But we are excited to kick the series off in the spring with another panel discussion. And today we have our alumni educators panel with us. And of course, Concord being known as the teachers college and having so many alums that have entered the teaching profession and have spent many years in education, we thought this would be a perfect panel discussion for this semester. And I think we've got a great group of alumni educators that have joined us today. And so I'm looking forward to hearing their stories and seeing what they have to say about not only their Concord experience, but their experience so far in education. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. And what we're going to do is we'll go through, we've got 4 panelists with us today. We have Sarah Balengi, we have Jordan Coleman, we have Andrew Cather, and we have Nicole McCormick. And so thanks to each of you all for joining us. And what we'll do is we'll just go one by one. They'll introduce themselves and share a little bit about their story and their background, and we'll move through with the 4 presentations, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So with that being said, I'm just looking at the order that's here on my camera. Sarah, do you mind to go ahead and kick us off?
Not at all. So my name is Sarah Balengi, and I grew up in Jackson County, West Virginia. I attended Ripley High School, and I currently live in Mercer County. I graduated from Concord University in the spring of 2007, and I began teaching at Bluefield High School in the fall of 2007. I spent 1 year at the high school level teaching health and physical education, and then 2 years teaching physical education at Bluefield Intermediate School. After those 3 years, I took my current position in 2010 at Princeton Middle School teaching health. This is my 11th year teaching middle school, and I definitely feel like I have found my place there. In my school, I serve not only as a teacher, but also as our related arts team leader. I have been doing that for the past 8 years, where I work with a group of 8 teachers, where I organize behavior incentives for the entire student population. I facilitate collaboration amongst our team of teachers, and I make sure that all the teachers have all the information that's being given out by administrators, not only at the building level, but also at the county level as well. I've also served as our Faculty Senate hiring representative for the past few years, which means I sit in on all of our interviews for positions in our school, and I make a recommendation along with their administrators for the hiring positions across our building. I'm also our local president for the Mercer County Education Association, where I represent over 400 teachers in our county. I've also served with the West Virginia Education Association at our delegate assembly and with our National Education Association at the representative assembly, as well as attended the Women's and Minority Leadership training that's been offered by the NEA.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add so far as about maybe your experience as a student at Concord and how that prepared you for this career, or why you chose teaching?
When I started at Concord, I was actually an elementary education major. I've always wanted to work with kids. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And my very first semester, I took my first education class, and I got to go do my first set of observations. And I was there for 3 days before I realized that first grade was not for me. I had my first kid who peed their pants, got pee all over their shoes and their shoelaces, and I had to help them change and then retie their soaked shoelaces. And at that point, I went, probably not my place. So I had to figure out, what was I going to do at that point? Like, what were my strengths? What were my weaknesses? And I knew at that point that teaching older kids was where I wanted to be. But then when you teach older kids, you have to figure out what you're going to teach. You can't just teach everything. And I really enjoy biology. I really enjoy the science aspect, but I do not enjoy the math aspect and didn't want to go into science education because of that. And so health education is really where I wanted to be. The PE went with that, and I actually really enjoyed kinesiology and physiology, and again, the biology portion of all of learning about it. So it was really a surprise for everybody, because when I was in high school, I was a music person, that I didn't choose music, but music still gets to be something that I do that's fun. It's not my job. Yeah, but that's how I picked PE and health, and that's how I ended up where I was.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it. Next, how about Jordan? You care to share with us your story?
Sure. I'm Jordan Coleman, and I graduated from Concord the first time in the fall of 2015 as Jordan Manning, and then I recently got married. So now I'm Miss Coleman in the classroom, which is really weird. But after I graduated from Concord with my elementary education degree, I knew that I wanted to pursue reading. Which is how I really knew that I wanted to become a teacher, was when I was younger. I was not the best student. I was not the best reader. My sister loved to read. My mom loved to read. My dad loved to read. And I loved to do anything that they didn't want to do. I was kind of not really a mean kid, but I struggled, and I didn't enjoy doing that at home, and I didn't really enjoy doing that at school. And I had several teachers along the way that just inspired me and helped me become the student that I was then, and now the teacher that I am now. So, and unlike Sarah, I knew little kids were my calling. Middle school kids kind of terrify me, and high school kids really terrify me. So elementary is just where my heart has always been. And so I went back to Concord and got my master's as a reading specialist. I worked in Wyoming County schools for 4 years, where I taught 2 years in third grade and 2 years as a Title I reading and math specialist. And I loved every second of that. When I did Title I worked at a kindergarten through 8th grade school. And I helped with all grades in between kindergarten through 8th grade, because the master's degree can get you through adults. So I was covered to help 6th, 7th, and 8th graders with math, and probably shouldn't have, but I did, and I tried my best. But Title I was definitely a spot that I felt very comfortable, because I could help the kids that struggled like I did as a younger kid. And so my mom is a teacher, my sister is a teacher, I have an aunt that's a teacher, and they all went to Concord. So I knew that's where I would go, and I knew that teaching was what I wanted to do. I loved my time at Concord. I think it really helped me become the teacher that I am. However, now instead of in Wyoming County, I am teaching currently for Roanoke City Public Schools. And I live in Salem, Virginia with my husband and our dog, but you will probably hear bark. So hopefully he'll be quiet. But I teach third grade small group reading and social studies with a team of 2 other women that teach the whole group reading and the math portion. So that's where I am now and how I got there.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you're up.
All right, my name's Andrew Cather. I'm originally from Ravenswood, West Virginia, and I graduated from Concord in 1999. So I think I'm one of the older ones of the group. My time at Concord was amazing. I played on the baseball team and just really enjoyed my time here. I've been an English teacher at the high school level for about 21 years now, and have loved every minute of it. I didn't originally start out to be an English teacher. I was a math major for the first, I think, year and a half I was at Concord, and it just came to the point where I was sitting in a class and I could not imagine myself doing that for the rest of my life. I dropped all my math classes. It dropped me under full time. I was in danger of losing my scholarship. I had to do something. I was actually eating lunch with one of our professors, and he said, "Why don't you just be an English major for a semester?" And I thought, okay, I got 2 good reasons to do this. I can read on away baseball trips and I can keep up with the work. And it's like 90% girls. I might actually get a date out of this. So I decided to be an English major. And really, it's just been an amazing experience. So I graduated in 1999, and at the time it was really difficult to get a teaching position in West Virginia. And so I was lucky enough I graduated, I was in the first class of mid-year graduates. So I graduated in December, and I was lucky enough to get a mid-year job right outside of Hickory, North Carolina, when that job finished up and that position ended, I got another job in Lincoln, North Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte. And I spent 12 years there. I loved every minute at Lincoln. While I was there, I got my national board certification and got my master's degree. And then a position opened up in Clover, South Carolina, which is in the same general area, but over the South Carolina border. And I've worked there for about 8 or 9 years. While I was there, I completed my PhD in curriculum and instruction with a focus on urban literacy. And so I've had a lot of different positions. I've taught every grade level at the high school. I've taught struggling students. I've taught honor students and everything in between. Just some of the cool things that I've been able to do, work on writing across the curriculum committee, where we helped infuse literacy through all classes across all disciplines in our district. I've worked on state level curriculum committees and have just really enjoyed my time in the classroom. Wouldn't trade it for anything. And right now I am teaching full-time online for my students in the Clover Virtual Academy.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, Nicole.
So I'm Nicole Mccormick, and I'm originally from Mercer County, and I went to elementary school there. I was one of the poor kids that we have in our classes that we really worry about, that comes from a broken home. So that was kind of part of what led me toward teaching. But I actually moved to Virginia, to Giles County, which is a border county to Mercer County, whenever I was in high school, and I graduated from high school from there. And the only thing I ever felt really good at was singing. I felt like I could sing pretty. And that's great and all, but I couldn't read music. So I applied to Concord and to Radford. Radford's music department didn't want anything to do with me because I didn't know how to read music. And Concord's music department took pity on me and said, we'll give you a semester. If you learn how to read music and you can pass these proficiency exams, we'll let you stay. And so I did what anybody wanted to do, and I busted my hind end and I learned how to read. And I am eternally grateful for the music department at Concord, because not only did I learn how to read music, but I learned how to play tons of instruments. I learned how to sing properly. I learned how to teach music. I learned how to be a better musician, a better person, more responsible. I got to participate in the collegiate singers and the Concords and the Quartets, which was a barbershop quartet for women. And I had just a great all-around experience with that. And Linda Hawkins, who unfortunately recently passed away, is kind of a goddess amongst music teachers in Mercer County. And she was my vocal instructor. And at the time, I graduated in 2009 with my bachelor's, and I came back to Concord and got a master's in education with an emphasis in geography in 2014. But Linda had to be in her early 70s when she was my vocal instructor. And she really inspired me. I'm thinking, your voice is something you get to keep forever. And she was one of the most powerful, beautiful singers. And so I was like, if I can do what Miss Hawkins does, then I can live a happy life. So I graduated in May of 2009, walked straight into a job in Mercer County. The principal actually told me in the interview, you're the only person applied, so would you like it? I was like, oh, that isn't good. I'm the only person to applied this job. So I worked at Oakville School. At that point in time, it was a pre-K through 8. And of course, your first couple of years are rough. You feel like you've kind of been thrown to the wolves. And I was the only music teacher, and again, a vocalist, not an instrumentalist. And so I had pre-K through 8, general music, choir, beginning band, hand chimes, like you name it, I had it. And then, of course, I had my first child in the spring of my second year, which gives another layer of craziness to it. I taught at Princeton Primary, which is a really big primary school for West Virginia. There's about 600 kids in it. And it's a K through 2. And I taught there for, I think, 8 years. And then I taught at Bluefield Middle, which, I know Jordan said, like, middle school is kind of rough. And, I know Sarah thinks that too. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of magical because they're transitioning and you get to be part of that. And it made me a better teacher. Like, I was kind of burnt out. And whenever I went to middle school, I got to kind of be revived because I was like, they need me. They need me to be calm. They need me to have everything together because they don't. So I need to be the adult in the room. But I taught there for 2 years. And my husband, who's also a Concord grad, his name is Dr. John McCormick, and he teaches as well. He's a couple years older than me, but he recently got a job in Greenbrier County. So we moved. And so now I'm teaching in Fayette County, even though I live in Greenbrier County, at this really nice community, but in the middle of nowhere, called Meadow Bridge. And it's the first time I've ever taught less than 600 students. Like, normally as a music teacher, I teach between 600 and 800 students, and I only have 200. So it's kind of like this magical, mythical, I didn't know that existed for music jobs. But it's been, even with the pandemic, it's been a really nice change. But as far as other than just classroom, Sarah and I have been both heavily involved in the union, and I was actually co-president with Sarah and president on my own before that. Mercer's one of the largest locals in the entire state, and I'm currently the secretary for MCEA, which is under WVEA and NEA. And I've been able to go to national conferences and state conferences, and after we had our work actions in 2018 and 2019, I've actually been able to travel across the country and speak about it, which has been really amazing. So I've been able to go to like Seattle and Portland and Oakland and Chicago, and I actually went to Yale University, not this fall, but the previous one, pre-pandemic. And it's really interesting because I think a lot of times as West Virginians, because we're all, I think, native West Virginians on here, you kind of feel like that you're like the end of the joke always. And so whenever that happened, it was like, you're a West Virginia teacher instead of you're from West Virginia. So it's been really empowering, and it's sometimes awkward, but always amazing whenever that you're the only West Virginian in the room and you get to be the face that they associate with that. So yeah. And actually I lived right across the street from Concord for like 15 years. And I was an artist. So super, super grateful, especially for the music department. They, like Dr. Mainland and Dr. Smith and Miss Hawkins, and they were all, and Dr. Hudson, very, very good to me, and made me want to be the type of music teacher that I hope I am.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I remember I had Miss Hawkins for my Music 101 class when I first started at Concord. So she really was a pretty phenomenal lady. That's neat to hear her mention as well. Now, what does your husband do in Greenbrier County? What's he teaching?
He is the credit recovery person. So he's, students that are struggling to keep it together in a traditional school environment. It's a way, it's called Option Pathways. And it's a way to keep children graduating in a traditional way, but in a non-traditional setting, if that makes sense. And he really loves it. He taught at Princeton High School for 12 or 13 years. And he has a geography degree, and he has a whole bunch of degrees. The perpetual student. But
right.
But it's been interesting to move, but at the same time, he's much happier and much more relaxed in his job, and I'm very happy. And other than pandemic craziness, more relaxed than I normally am. So it's been exciting so far.
That's great. I do appreciate all of you all sharing your stories with us. And since Nicole's mentioned the pandemic, that actually I've gotten some questions that I thought we could discuss. And that's one question that I'd like to hear everybody just kind of comment on. How has your teaching style or your interaction with students, how has it changed due to teaching during the pandemic? I mean, we've heard a lot. I know, so many professions, so many people, of course, this has hit all of us, but, you hear teaching and education mentioned, pretty much as much as with those frontline workers, first responders, healthcare workers. This has been a huge change for you all. So could you share with us a little bit kind of how you've had to change or adapt during this past year?
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Go right ahead.
So I actually teach a 9-week course that I get all the kids that are in the school. So by the end of the year, I usually have about 600 kids. And I teach a very interactive class because it's 9 weeks, try to keep it fun, try to keep it moving. I do flexible seating normally. We do a lot of art projects along with what we're doing, because we talk a lot about mental and emotional health. I'm a health teacher, so we do mental and emotional health. We do social interactions. We talk about sexual health, all sorts of things. And you have to keep it interesting. You have to keep it fun. And this year, none of those things are possible. All the flexible seating had to go away, and I was scrounging for tables and chairs to put in my classroom so that all the kids can face the same direction. We can't share any art supplies. We can't share any supplies at all. You can't do any group work. And so my class went from a very interactive, very relaxed atmosphere to being much more structured, much less comfortable, especially for my returning students who had expectations about what it would be like when they got there. And so we went from doing group projects and doing interactive things to everything is online. Our students show up with a laptop and all of their assignments are digital and their textbooks are digital, and they're turning everything in digitally, just like most of us did when we were working maybe at the master's level. And that's what these kids are doing at 11 and 12 years old right now. When they're remote, we are doing Teams meetings with them. We are a Microsoft area. And so we do Microsoft Teams meetings with our students. They are listening to presentations that we are making. We're recording ourselves teaching and trying to put them out there so that if they're not able to be in our regular meetings, they can still get the lessons. It has been a lot of adaptation, not just for the teachers, but mainly for our students. They went from learning in a social environment to learning individually on their own, a lot of times pretty self-paced. And so this year has been a much, much different school year just for everybody across the board.
I've kind of had a pretty similar experience. Our school district has been a one-to-one laptop district for a while now, but then once the shift was made for, especially for me, I'm in the part of the school where the students are 100% online. The students also have a choice to be on campus part-time as well, but my group is 100% online. And so just that social and emotional health is really, really difficult. And for me, you're right, a lot of it is self-paced. And so my role has kind of changed a little bit. I feel like I'm a little bit more, I guess I've taken it more of a mentorship role, and it's allowed me to come alongside a lot more students than I had before. And so in some ways, it's been a good change. And I think that a lot of our students have flourished in this online environment. Some of them are still struggling. But I think just being able to reach out individually and have those individual meetings set up, I'm almost become more of a facilitator of the curriculum instead of a driver of the curriculum. And so that's been a big change in our world down here.
Just to go off of what both of them have said, I think adaptation has been a big thing for me. I guess because I am a younger teacher, people assume I know how to work different things on the computer and how to host a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, or how to make a PDF into a digital thing that a kid can work on. So for me, it's been just more, I feel like I'm back in school and I'm learning how to help these kids. I teach predominantly 8 and 9-year-olds. The first 9 weeks of our school year, Roanoke City was completely 100% virtual. And so my teammates and I would plan our Teams meetings kind of around each other, and we wouldn't expect them to be very long, and we wouldn't expect them to, for our students to sit there and do paper pencil work while we're on the computers with them, because they're 8 and 9. Some of them have parents at home, some of them don't. Some of them are in daycare, some of them aren't. And so that first 9 weeks, I really kind of learned as a teacher that if you don't have a team, it is so incredibly hard to do it on your own. And so I think professionally, I've tried to just like work more collaboratively and work more with other teachers and to learn in that way. But as far as our students go, I think we have just had to learn how to help them with or without help at home. It's very hard to make an 8-year-old be like intrinsically motivated to get their work done and self-motivated to get up at 8 and join a reading class or get up at 9 and join a math class. So we've just tried to be very graceful with our students and their parents. And we transitioned from the first 9 weeks to in-person, the second 9 weeks doing a hybrid model. So 11 of my kids come on Monday and Tuesday, and the other 11 come on Wednesday and Thursday. And then everybody is on the computer on Fridays. And then the days that they're not at school, they're expected to do computer work on their own. So having to balance that has been a struggle. So time management has become more aware to me, and just the ability to be flexible. If a student doesn't log on, I have to figure out why. I've got to make that phone call. I've got to talk to that parent, or just to try to find a way to hold students and parents accountable has been a struggle. But overall, I feel like I've gotten closer with my students in a sense, just because I feel like I've really had to form a relationship over the computer and then continue that when they came back in person. And so I feel like I've been able to learn more about just like how they learn and how, like, where they come from, and just like they invited us into their homes for their teaching and for their learning. And so now I feel like the best way to make them feel more comfortable at school is just to focus on that relationship and focus on getting them the skills that they lost last year, just in not being able to complete their second grade year, trying to just, because I do teach the small groups, so I do get to kind of work more on their level and kind of bridge those gaps. We have big shields up in our room, which look weird, and so that way, but we can still work in groups as long as we have our big poster boards up and they can see each other and they can work with each other. And so I think just being adaptive has been key to teaching through the pandemic.
For the most part, my learning environment has looked kind of similar to what Jordan said with her schedule. You know, half the kids come on Monday, Tuesday, the other half on Thursday, Friday, and then a fully remote day. Now, as a music teacher, it's a little different because there's more of a focus on me providing enrichment, because they're little, over top, because the reading and math are so much the focus. But speaking of like in person, when I have them in person, we're not allowed to sing, which, you know, is fine. Like, I want to keep everybody healthy. But at the same time, pre-K through third grade music, especially pre-K through 2, is like 98% singing. It's like whenever that you teach these things, whenever you teach theory and history and all of that stuff, it's all wrapped up in singing and dancing and, you know, like movement games and things like that, because you can teach very complex issues that you can build, skills that you can build on later through singing and through dancing. And, you know, and I always incorporate lots of things, because I learned very early on. I had an administrator one time that I can't remember how that I made him angry, but I made him angry. And he told me that basically, in a not very nice way, that all I was a planning period. And legally in West Virginia, pre-K through 5th grade, I'm a planning period. Like, they don't legally have to have music. So I decided from that point on that I was like, well, I'm going to make music important. You know, if it's important to me, it's going to be important to everyone else. And I've always felt like music is kind of, you kind of get to be the ambassador of the school. You know, we're the people that go out on the field. We're the people that go to the nursing homes. We're the people that they call for Patriot Day or whatever it is. You know, whenever they want a good show, they call the music people. So kind of a little bit on a different side of this, because they've all touched on, I think, things that we're all struggling with. But something that I hope that people have realized throughout all of this is how much is laid at the feet of the school and of teachers and of school workers. You know, the amount of food that we have sent out into the community. It's necessary because there are no social safety nets in American society. Like, the only thing you are guaranteed is public school. Like, that's it. You're not guaranteed health care. You're not guaranteed housing. You're not guaranteed anything, an income. You're only guaranteed public school. So because of that, unlike in Fayette County, almost every school has access to a medical facility. And, you know, there are throughout the country, there are school systems that have done that and made sure that, like, each school can access directly medical professionals. Well, you know, whenever the school isn't functioning normally and you add, you know, pandemic level, everybody's got to go everywhere to try to, like, deal with this type of thing. I almost feel like that hopefully people realize that we've made public schools a tourniquet for all of the ills of the world that our government doesn't want to step up and deal with. And I already felt that way. But to hear other coworkers actually say that and say things like, I don't know how much more I can give, or I'm really worried about so-and-so because normally I'm the one that buys their coat every year, or I'm the one that makes sure that, you know, grandma isn't, you know, not taking her medication so she can pay for her heat. And so I just think that I hope that people outside of education realize that too, of how much that the people in the school building has taken on to make sure that their kids, you know, are able to live and that their families are as well.
That's a really great perspective. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, so what, another question would be, you know, do you all have any tips or suggestions for, you know, future teachers out there on how they can, I guess it's a little bit about classroom management, you know, how do you gain that respect in the classroom and maintain control of it while still being able to develop those relationships with those students? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
So I've been teaching middle school for a long time, and middle school is like teaching in dog years, and I've done 11 human years. So that's like 77 dog years of teaching. And I will say, like, kids that age can smell fear. They know when you walk into that room, if you're not confident in yourself, they know. And they're going to eat you alive. And that's just how 12-year-olds work. That's how that worked when you were 12. That's how that works now. One of the big things that I always tell people is say what you mean and mean what you say. Know exactly what your expectations are and be upfront with those. You do not have to be mean to still be stern and still be consistent, because consistency is going to make or break you as far as classroom management goes. And that can be tough because we talk a lot about, well, you know, you have to adapt. You have to make allowances for this student because this student has a behavior intervention plan, and you have to look out for this student because this student has ADHD. And so this student can do things that this one can't, but you're still trying to be consistent. So we're going to ask you to do all sorts of things that's impossible to do at the same time. But we're going to go with consistency this time because it's appropriate when you're talking about how you're handling your classroom. I will be very honest, when you go into a building, every building is going to have a different culture. And you need to talk to your experienced teachers, not the one who's on the way out, who's cranky and already hates everything. That's not the one you want to talk to. You need to talk to somebody who's been in that building for a couple of years and still enjoys their job. Find out what works in their classroom, what doesn't work in their classroom, what works across the hall in that teacher's classroom. Actually talk to the teachers. One thing that I have found that's happened a lot is we have young teachers who come in. It's usually the middle of the year because that's what they're graduating in the middle of the year. There's an opening. They're the only one that's applying for a job in December. January shows up and they get to be a brand new teacher. And a lot of times, and again, I'm a team leader. I always go in and I always introduce myself and I offer help. And everybody's like, no, I've got this. And you don't ask for help, you don't take help, and you get overwhelmed very, very quickly because you don't know the culture of the school. You don't know the kids yet. Where I can look at you and be like, I think you're going to have Sally. And with Sally, you need to make sure that she's not near Julie, or else you're going to have issues every single day. And you can help them from the pitfalls, because there's some pitfalls that are going to happen no matter what you're getting into. But you have to be willing to ask for help, and then you have to be willing to actually take it. Because I understand when you have a brand new shiny degree, you're proud of what you know, and you should be proud of what you know, but you're going to continue to learn things about your profession the entire time that you're in it. As I said, I'm in year 14, and I learn new things every single year. I'm lucky enough, I teach a 9-week course. So every 9 weeks, like if I screwed up last 9 weeks, I can do it different this time. And I frequently do. And one thing that I always tell younger teachers, I'm a parent, I have a teenager, I have a son who's in high school, and I have one who's in elementary school in the 3rd grade. And I always tell them, I said, you may be okay with like my kid, because I will not let my kid act this way in your room. But you have to remember that not every kid has that parent. And so you have to make sure that you are structuring everything in a way that it's going to be successful for every kid, not just the ones that come from a supportive home. So if I had to say one thing, be willing to take advice when you need it.
Great, thank you. Anybody else wanna?
My biggest lesson from middle school is to not overreact. Like I was, I've been called things, and I'd like to think that I'm a pretty like laid back person. I mean, I do have high expectations, and I try to be very consistent, but I learned very quickly that if I overreact, it just blows the situation up, and it isn't helping anybody. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is learn how to like calmly deal with it and understand, because, some children, it's like, they feed off of that. So like if you're giving them that like type of thing, then they just eat it up and give you even more back. So like try to, namaste, like try to like keep as calm as you can and still deal with whatever the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been teaching 5 years, so I feel like I'm kind of considered still a younger teacher. I will agree that you have to find that older mentor teacher that can help you. My first year was tough. I graduated, like I said, in 2015, mid-year. I subbed the whole semester in January because in Wyoming County, they didn't really have anything open for the elementary level. And I just didn't feel comfortable taking something that may tarnish how I feel about teaching. And so I was like, I'm going to be a sub, and I'm going to learn as much as I can and go to as many different schools as I can. And so when I landed my first teaching position that following fall, I had, no real classroom experience. I had sub experience, but being a sub is different from being like the one that's solely responsible for these 24 kids in your room. And so thankfully, the woman that I got to do my student teaching with happened to also be a 3rd grade teammate at the school that I got the position at. And so I just soaked in as much as I could from her. And then the other 3rd grade teacher was my 3rd grade teacher. And so I just had such a great support system. And I think learning from them was the best thing that I could do in that first year, in that second year, in that 3rd year. Even now, like I'm new to a building, I'm new to a school district, and relying on those teachers that have been there and those teachers that know these students, and just really getting a good feel of the culture and the climate of the school that you work for, not just with your colleagues and not just with your administrators, but really getting to know the community that you work in, the families that you work with. I come from a very rural small town in West Virginia, and now I'm working downtown in the city of Roanoke. So they are two totally different cultures, I feel like. However, they still suffer from the same issues, and they still have the same types of people, either good or bad. Like it's still, there are similarities in that sense, but it was a culture shock for me to just go into this environment and not really know. So again, I tried to find teachers that could help me. It almost feels like I'm back at year 1, even though I've taught almost 5 years. And so if you can find that teacher in your building or that group of teachers in your building, find them, talk with them, learn from them, and just be willing to accept that you don't know everything. Like I've never been one to think that I know everything, but you can get sucked into the Instagram teachers and the Pinterest classrooms, and you can just make it look so pretty. But then you got a room full of 24 8-year-olds that are eating you alive, or 12-year-olds, or 18-year-olds. And so you can't just have it look pretty and be what you want. You've got to really know those kids and those families in your community.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the important things is to not forget what it's like to be a student. And that's why I think it's always like to go back and, whether you're working on a master's degree or whatever, just to take a class every now and then, but to be back in that student's chair, I think is really, really important. And it helps kind of frame your mentality when you talk to your own students, because it's really, really easy to forget. Before I went back and got my master's, I think it was about a 10-year gap, and it was really easy to forget what it was like to sit back in that chair. And at least at the high school level, one of the things that the students are really looking for is they're looking for a mentorship. They're looking for someone to show them what kind of the adult world needs to be and to open gates for them. And I think that like treating them that way is really, really important, and giving that respect as well. I can tell you a number of times in my classes, and it happens every year, and if not every month and every week, like there'll be a lesson going on and something isn't going right. And it's okay to stop and just say to the entire class, this isn't working. And I've had good relationships with a lot of my classes where I could say, like, this isn't working. Tell me where you're not getting it, and we'll just stop right now and let's just restart. And so you always have that plan that you go in with, but be flexible enough to meet the needs of the students in the moment, because there are a lot of those teachable moments that come up as a teacher, and take advantage of those. And I think students respect that. And like I said, they're looking for someone, at least in the high school level, they're looking for someone to help them go to whatever they're going into, straight into the workforce, into a university. They're looking for someone to open those doors for them, or at least help them find the doors themselves. And so I think, by treating them with that, with a lot of respect there, and treating them as adults, for the good and the bad. If they drop the ball, they drop the ball. But being willing to come by and say, you dropped the ball this time, it doesn't mean that you have to drop it next time. Let me show you how to do this a little bit better. I found that kind of mentorship has really, really been effective at the high school level.
Sounds great. And I love we've got the different perspectives with the elementary, middle school, and high school. So we're getting all grade levels here. So my next question then would be, and I know that, the teacher education program here at Concord is, it's very full. It's pretty well laid out as far as what you do when. But I'm curious, is there anything that you all did while you were a student, an extra experience, an outside, whether it was campus or community involvement? Was there something extra that you all did that you feel like really kind of helped, prepare you for this field, or that really helped develop you as a student, as a teacher? Was there anything that anybody experienced? Just thinking if current students are watching this and wondering what they could do, in terms to help kind of better prepare themselves for this field.
I'll start just by saying there were two organizations that I worked with a lot at Concord that really allowed me to volunteer and work within schools and work with young children. And that was being a member of Tri Sigma. I feel like we tried to do a lot of community outreach and really help out with things that just made it feel special, and made me just realize that service to children is important, and that if we don't take care of the children in our community, or the children in just in a greater perspective, that we're really going to hurt our future. And the second one is being a Bonner Scholar. I was allowed to volunteer in a kindergarten classroom at Athens Elementary for my first full 4 full semesters. And I got to learn how to use a laminator, and I got to learn how to run copies on cardstock and construction paper. I got to see how kindergartners are on the first day of school, how they are on the last day of school, how they are after a long break. And just those little moments that I feel like you don't really get out of an actual education observation, because you have to dress super professional and you have to be the one that delivers that lesson, or you have to be the one that's observing that teacher. Whereas I could really just go in the classroom in my t-shirt and my nice jeans and get on the floor and read a book with the kid, or I could help prep the craft that you were going to do with their families, or get the finger paint out of somebody's hair, or mop up the accident someone might have had on the floor. So I just feel like those two, just working with Sigma community-wise and then working within the schools through the Bonner Scholarship Program, really helped me know that teaching was what I wanted to do, and that I didn't mind to also just kind of get my hands dirty and just dive right in and learn all I could in any aspect, whether that was doing community service or volunteering in a school or helping out with like giving out candy at Wilson. Just like those little things made such a difference that I didn't think would impact me as a teacher, really made me just want to instill those same kind of fun moments I had with my students now. So definitely getting involved in campus organizations, I think, is make sure time at Concord, time well spent.
I always encourage that when you go and you do your observations, even if you're not required to actually teach lessons, to be involved in the classroom. And again, I'm health and PE, so I would show up and I would be teaching PE lessons. And if I wasn't teaching the PE lessons, I would go interact in the PE lessons and go play soccer with the students and get to know the students, get to work on how I'm going to interact with kids, what worked, what didn't work. Because I will say that I'm not sure what the coursework requires now, but when I was there, the only special education course that I had to take was adaptive PE. And I have absolutely used what I've learned in that class, but working in the classrooms, working not only as a student teacher, but also when I was doing my observations, is really the only place that I learned how to make accommodations for learning disabilities and learned anything about learning disabilities, because at the point where I was at Concord, that wasn't a normal part of our coursework unless you were specializing in special education. So I would highly recommend, even if that's not something that's required, make sure that you have at least a basic knowledge of adaptations and modifications and how those are different from each other, and what you need to do to be able to meet the needs of all of your students, not just your average students.
I'd just like to reiterate the value of the field work. And take advantage of every observation opportunity that you have. And like a couple of people have already said, don't sit back and just sit in the back of the room and just watch what happens. Get in there and interact with the kids and be an active participant, because that's going to be your field of work in the very near future. I know I've worked with a number of lateral entry, and that's what they call them in North and South Carolina. I'm not sure in West Virginia, where you have someone who comes out of the business world and will just take a couple courses and go into the classroom. One thing that they're really missing is those observation opportunities. And so really take advantage of those, and because those really do give you a sense of what the day-to-day life is going to be like, and what the struggles and the success stories can be for you. So absolutely take advantage of all those opportunities.
Thank you.
For me, what was most beneficial and I think most lasting, other than what has been said, was not only participating in performances and preparing for those, but the requirement to watch others perform and to be able to evaluate that. And I was also encouraged by professors to get involved with community choirs and with church choirs, because even if you're not religious or anything like that, there's still a lot of benefit in seeing the various levels of ability, because as you age, your voice ages, unless that you do certain things to keep it at peak health. And so you need to learn how to be able to make that work. And a lot of, because in general, teaching is not very highly paid, and we have so much student loan debt and things like that, people work extra side gigs. And so with musicians, a lot of times their extra side gig is with a church or with a community choir. And so you have to learn how to make that successful whenever that their vocal range is this big. Like kind of like what Andrew was talking about, like taking advantage of the opportunity. And really, and Sarah too, because I had never really worked with severe and profound children, children that have severe mental and physical issues that you have to learn how to navigate. And as a music teacher, I was like, oh, we're going to sing and dance. It's going to be great. Well, if someone can't really vocalize much and they only have the use of one hand, or that they need to use a wheelchair, you have to learn how to get that child involved and make sure that they are enjoying themselves and that they know that they are an equal participant in the classroom. So anytime you have an opportunity to do something extra, like if there's an extra ensemble outside of the school day that you're not required to go to, that you can fit it in your schedule, go to it. Because that is just another opportunity for you. So I would just encourage, like they said, I know it's a little bit different because I'm a musician, but I had to go from being the performer to teaching others to be the performer, to letting them be the star, for it not being about me. And so it takes all those opportunities to be able to learn how to do that effectively.
Great, thank you very much. And we're about at the end of our time here, so I guess I would just kind of like to wrap things up with, do you all have any final thoughts to share? Again, how, I guess a couple other things going through my mind is still, would you do it all over again the same? If you had to go through this again, would you make the same choice? How do you, or thoughts on maybe how you keep it interesting? Because a lot of times if you are teaching content over and over, that could get a little redundant sometimes. So I guess just really any final thoughts, anything you all haven't shared before we wrap up?
You mind if I start?
No,
mine's a little, because I figure they're going to talk about exactly what you're talking about, so I'm just going to give a little piece of advice. I would encourage everyone to make sure that you're involved in your union. It's very, very important, because no matter if you're a right to work state, which is most of the South, or you're one that has a lot of authority, there is always power in numbers. So, the reason that not just teachers, but school employees struck in 2018 was because we had taken a pay cut for 3 years, and then our healthcare was going to be blown through the roof, and it was just going to be completely unaffordable. And truly people were going to get to the point where they couldn't afford to stay. They couldn't afford to stay in the place that they fell in love with their spouse and had their babies and their grandparents are buried. And, this is our home, and they weren't going to be able to afford to stay. And the only reason we were successful is because that we talked to each other. We worked together to try to figure out how to deal with the issue. So that is where your power is, because if you're in a state where you don't have any collective bargaining rights, which means that you get to be part of your contract, which again is like the entire South and West Virginia, you just have to take what's given to you, which means that like in West Virginia, we have protected planning periods and we have protected duty-free lunches. Well, ask anybody that works in the South, ask Andrew. I have a friend that worked in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is near Hilton Head, and he was expected to do home visits on his own time without any extra pay. Or I've had friends that work in Virginia that are expected to go to trainings with no extra pay. And so I just feel like that because you give so much of your life, you live this is your life. This is what your passion is. It doesn't mean that you have to. And the only way to protect yourself and to make sure, and it's not just about you, make sure that you can have class sizes that are reasonable. Make sure you have the things that you need so that your PE classroom is successful. Make sure you can afford to replace that clarinet as if you are part of a professional association. So I would encourage everyone to do that, to make sure that you are not only a dues paying member, but you're showing up to those meetings and that you're involved.
Yeah, as the person that has to head those meetings, absolutely show up, be there, talk to people. I will tell you that at least once a month, I have a sit-down meeting with our superintendent of schools. We talk about the things that are happening, the things that people are concerned about, what we can do to try to make things better. But guys, it's very important that you know not only what your rights are, but also what your responsibilities are, and that you are meeting all of those responsibilities. And that's going to vary depending on where you are. In the state of West Virginia, after school trainings, you're going to be paid for them. Other places, that's not the case. And so you have to know not only your rights, but your responsibilities as well. And then if you are not getting the things that you should, how do you handle that situation? Where do you go? And guys, again, that's where your professional organization is going to be very, very important there. And ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not know the answers. I tell people all the time that I don't know the answers, but I know somebody who might. Let me make a phone call. And that's perfectly okay to do that. And if you move from one place to another, it's going to change based on where you are.
Andrew, y'all have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my final thoughts would be go bold into this new adventure of yours. Don't sit back and just try to do the same thing that you'd seen in school. Learn what some of the new, most exciting, cutting edge techniques are that are research based, and try those in your classroom. Remember that, you may not be able to change the entire world, but you are going to be able to change the world of individual children. And it's both it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do it. And I think that going into the field with that kind of ideas, that allows you to really see what you can do, and you can make a tremendous impact on students' lives and in a community and by proxy in the entire world. So really go in, never stop learning, and really go in it really to change the world and change everything that you can to make it a better place, because you have the opportunity to do just that.
Definitely agree with what he said and what they've said. I was involved in the union in West Virginia my 4 years there. So get involved within your school, within your communities, and don't be afraid to be silly or to step out of your comfort zone. Remember that they're kids. So if you have to stop and have a TikTok dance break, stop and have a TikTok dance break. If you need to let a student cry, let them cry, let them be there, let them be kids, and let them just enjoy the time that you have with them and enjoy the space that you get to share with them, because most of the time your students are just yours for a year. I know that's the case in elementary school, so make the most out of that year that you get them, or that 9 weeks, or the 4 years that you get them, because you may be the one person that they see smile, or they hear believes in them, or they hear are proud of them. So take advantage of those moments that you're given.
Very much. As a parent of a elementary age child, and I've had a lot of family members that were teachers. It is an amazing profession. There are many of us that are not cut out for it, but we are very thankful to have people like you out in this world that are doing it and doing a great job at it and representing Concord really well in what you're doing. So I appreciate all of you all, what you're doing in your profession, and also for taking time out of your schedules to chat with us today. I thank everyone who has watched this, and stay tuned for more Alumni Speaker Series presentations coming up this semester. Have a good day.